Bend Around the Wind by Skylea. Chapter 70. Thunderstruck, or The Breakfast of Champions. Hatchet, stop doing that. You're driving me crazy, Stark said as he rubbed his temple. Hatchet looked up from where he was repeatedly kicking one of the bottom kitchen cabinets. What else am I supposed to do? Hatchet asked. Kicking the furniture does not qualify as doing something, Stark told him. If you can't sit still, go somewhere else. I'm not leaving, Hatchet said as he crossed his arms over his chest. Stark sighed in annoyance. If they had to go another hour like this, Juyu was sure that the two of them would be the ones to attempt murdering one another. Things between Loki and Thor had been peaceful as far as they could tell. Jarvis did not alert them to any damage or actual fighting. The few times Stark asked what was happening in his living room, Jarvis just told them that they were talking. For some reason, neither Stark nor Hatchet was reassured by that. B was bored, anyone could tell, while Bruce and Drongo entertained themselves with a discussion Juyu wasn't able to follow after a couple of minutes. They tried to include Stark in their conversation, but he was too focused on whatever was happening in the other room to concentrate on anything else. Normally, he was great at multitasking, so it just showed how worried he was. Can we watch a film? Juyu asked. Stark's men insisted that they all enjoy Earth entertainment because they needed to be educated. It was a fun way to learn about Earth. Juyu enjoyed watching films once she grasped why pretending to be someone else was fun for humans. It was not hard to understand. She knew that mimicry and pretense were not easy skills, but she didn't get what the point was if everyone knew that the humans on screen were pretending. But some of them were so good at it that she quickly took interest. It was a fun game to watch the humans act like others, and she learned a lot about deception while trying to see when some of them made mistakes. When a cry was false or a laugh was empty, it was easy to see it. She was sure that the next time she took another shape, she would be a lot better at keeping character, as she heard humans call it. She even practiced her voice mimicry, copying one human after another. Really, it was fun. B liked watching films too. Of course, she did not engage in them as much as Juyu, but she sometimes shifted shapes along with Juyu to show her some details she missed, or just for no reason. She acted so carefree sometimes, so calm and attentive, that Juyu just expected her to simply start talking too. It never happened, but she spoke without words now. She did not shy away from making faces, to chuckle, to snort. The moments when her eyes glazed over with anger or when she locked up and became unresponsive were few and far between, and she always snapped out of it if someone called her name. Maybe this was the best she was going to get, but that would be enough for Juyu. Sure thing, Stark shrugged. At least I'll stop wanting to crawl up the walls. Juyu doubted that he would be able to distract himself from what was going on in his living room with a film, but at least he was willing to do something rather than just sit around and do nothing. That was something. Jarvis's warning came a couple of hours later and a few seconds before they all heard the sound of glass shattering. A massive amount of glass from the sound of it. Stark and Hatchet were on their feet first, unsurprisingly. Drongo and Bruce joined them on their way, coming out from the kitchen where they kept talking instead of watching a film with the rest of them. B followed them too, so Juyu stood up as well. She wasn't worried about Loki, not like that. He could take care of himself. It was just the united front Stark kept talking about. She immediately felt a strong breeze on her face as they neared the main living room. It became obvious why when they entered and saw that half of the glass panels were broken. But since both Thor and Loki were in the room, at least neither of them tried to throw the other out of the window. After looking around swiftly, Juyu realized that at least one of Stark's ugly statues was missing. So they just threw stuff at each other. That wasn't so bad. Juyu had to fight the urge to throw stuff at Hatchet every day. At least it looked like there was no blood. The way Thor kept Loki pinned into the wall by his throat was not so good, though. The two of them kept staring at each other, glaring even. They didn't seem to notice that they had company. Hatchet moved first, barely stopping after he marched into the room, but before he could get close, Drongo put an arm out and stopped him. Hatchet sent him a withering glare, but of course Drongo was unfazed. He was already walking over to the still silently glaring bear. At least Stark managed to control himself enough to not rush into things. Without his armor, it would have been a bad idea. Drongo stopped right next to Loki and Thor, and they finally became aware of their surroundings then. Thor looked surprised for a moment as he looked up at the giant. Then he frowned.
Hello, my name is Drongo. It's very nice to meet you. Now, if you could be so kind to let go of Loki, I would really appreciate that.
She couldn't see Drongo's face from where she was standing, but she could guess the look he was giving Thor. It had to be that patient, composed look he had that said that he was only going to stay calm as long as people were reasonable. It was a perfectly non-aggressive look that never failed to promise all the horrible things that would befall on those who managed to test his patience. She had no idea how Drongo did it, but it was a pretty effective look. Not even Hatchet was completely immune to it. Thor? Bruce questioned. The big blonde looked back at Loki, then his shoulders sagged a little and he let go of him. He stepped back without breaking eye contact. Loki was staring right back at him. Juyu had a hard time reading his face. He mostly just looked angry and stubborn. Drongo did not step in between them, not really, but he was in a position where he could, if he wanted to. So the message was clear. Juyu heard many stories about how strong Thor was, but he better not try Drongo on this. If Drongo said no fighting, then there would be no fighting. It was best if Big and Blonde learnt that as soon as possible. Loki's posture was already more relaxed as the fight went out of him, even if there was still some anger in his eyes. Okay, that's it. Time out, Stark said, stepping forward now that Drongo played his peacemaker meat shield role. No more of this today. You both need to cool your heads. Thor, stay the night, at least tonight. Sleep, think things through, digest some of all this news. Can you do that? Thor didn't answer right away, so Stark continued. Loki's not going anywhere, I swear, he said. Thor raised an arm without taking his eyes off of Loki, and a moment later a big hammer flew right into his hand. Juju was startled by that for a moment, even if she was pretty sure she managed to hide her surprise well. When Thor finally looked around the room, his eyes lingered on Bee and Juyu for a moment, but he turned and stepped away from Drongo and Loki without a word, leaving the room with his long red cape billowing behind him. I better go after him, Bruce offered. Yeah, thanks. Stark nodded. Hey, take this after him, he said as he picked up a leather bag from the floor. Bruce took the bag from Stark, then turned and left a moment later.
Loki,
Drongo questioned. He never asked Loki if he was fine or alright, not in so many words. It was something Juyu noticed a while back. She wasn't sure why he never did, but sometimes it was hard to understand how Loki and Drongo worked around one another. It's fine, thank you, Loki said briskly. Drongo nodded. He put a heavy hand on Loki's shoulder for a moment before walking away from him.
So what was that?
Stark asked as he looked around the room. Oh crap, is my floor cracked too? I may have said some very unflattering things about his father, Loki said quietly, still leaning against the wall and looking at the broken windows. Oh, that explains it, Hatchet nodded.
I thought you were not going to get into the Odin topic this soon,
Stark said. Loki shrugged. He may have said some unflattering things about certain matters that provoked me. Stark sighed at those words while Hatchet nodded approvingly. Good! Don't let him get away with such things, Hatchet said.
I could say it's not the smartest thing to strike back like that all the time,
Stark said.
But I'm always doing it too, so...
He shrugged again. Yes, well, it was inevitable, Loki said.
Jarvis, schedule some repairs for tomorrow,
Stark asked. I already took the liberty to do so, sir, Jarvis replied.
You can go finish your movie if you want,
Stark said then, looking at Juyu and Bee. It was not an offer, but a request. But Juyu didn't mind giving them some privacy. She was pretty sure that whatever they were going to talk about was going to end with the exchange of bodily fluids at some point, and she would rather not witness that at all. Yeah, sure, she said. Bee was already walking out, and even Drongo joined them. Hatchet stayed behind for a bit, but even he flopped down next to Juyu on the sofa after 10 minutes or so. His face was grim, though, and that was the sort of expression on Hatchet's face that never failed to make Juyu just a little bit uneasy. Thunder. Thunder! Thunder! Juyu jolted up in her bed, almost falling to the floor as she moved too quickly. Jarvis, turn it off! She yelled angrily. The noise, music, whatever, cut off immediately. My apologies, Miss Juyu, the computer said. Master Loki and Master Hatchet are awaiting you for breakfast. Juyu groaned as she rubbed her face. Those jerks! She didn't get up because there was no way she could get back to sleep. Also because she was sure someone would just wake her up again. She untangled the sheets from around her legs and made her way over to the bathroom. Did everyone else get the wake-up call too? She asked then. Yes, the whole mansion, Jarvis answered. Seriously, jerks. When Juyu finally made her way down to the kitchen, she was less murderous, but still not too happy with the world. Drongo, Bee, and Bruce were already inside, and so were Hatchet and Loki. Drongo looked a little disgruntled, so that meant he also had an unpleasant awakening. Bee was scowling at her cup of tea, but she did that every morning, so it was nothing new. Bruce looked surprisingly not angry and well slept. Sit! Breakfast! Hatchet said from the stove. Loki was standing next to him, leaning against the counter like the picture of innocence. What a joke. You're jerks, she grumbled, but she didn't sit down, but just for the food. Hatchet laughed. Jarvis is at least half to blame, the elf said. I was merely following instructions, the AI said. We told them to pick out music from Stark's collection that was fitting the occasion, Stark said. I thought it was more suitable than Thunder Road, Jarvis said. Mr. Stark usually prefers it as well. Did he? Loki asked. He is loudly and resolutely planning Master Hatchet's murder at the moment, Jarvis reported. Hatchet snickered again. Juyu wanted to comment on that, but the elf put down a full plate in front of her and, well, food. So she started eating. So how come we're not having the Hulk as a breakfast guest? She asked after a moment. I was already awake, Bruce said while he was sipping his coffee. Julia looked over at the clock in the kitchen, which showed that it was disgustingly early, then back at Bruce. She narrowed her eyes. You're a freak, she told him, then went back to eating. Been called worse, Bruce answered easily. I'm sure the Hulk would have been lovely company too, Hatchet said. Bruce shook his head. You're worse than Tony, he said. Damn right I am, Hatchet agreed proudly. It was Loki's turn to chuckle. Drongo grumbled something under his nose, and Bee just kept scowling at her cup without reacting to the conversation around her at all. Then Thor walked in, and the kitchen promptly fell silent. He was not wearing his armor from yesterday, but he was not in Earth's clothes either, because Juyu was good at recognizing those at this point. It was still something softer and more comfortable looking. His tunic was soft brown and red on the edges, but of course he was wearing brown leather pants with it. This had got to be an Asgardian thing. It was almost impossible to get Loki out of the things either. Hey Thor, come on, sit, breakfast. Bruce spoke up first, gesturing at the empty chair between him and Bee. Thor looked at Loki, then Hatchet, then finally at Drongo, Juyu, and Bee. He was frowning again, but it was a confused frown and not an angry frown. Juyu thought that this was probably a big deal because their first breakfast with Bruce felt like a big deal too. Hatchet is a jerk, but he's a good cook, Juyu prompted. Yeah, that didn't make Thor frown any less. Loki sighed, then huffed, then grabbed an empty plate and put food on it himself. He leaned over the table next to Juyu to put it down in front of the empty chair. Sit down. You won't be asked again, Loki said firmly before he went back to the kitchen counter. He picked up his mug and started drinking. Juyu wasn't sure if it was so that he could stop himself from saying more or to make sure he didn't have to say more. Hatchet was glaring at Thor again from the corner of his eyes, though. That spoke volumes. Thor did sit down, so yeah, whatever. She still had food on her plate, so she went back to eating. The silence that fell was maybe just a little tense, and Julia really hated it. Breakfast was usually one of her favorite things. She liked it on the ship and liked it here. No way was this stupid drama going to ruin her breakfast. So, quite a wake-up call, huh? She asked. It took Thor a moment to realize that she was talking to him.
Oh, I've had worse,
He said after a moment.
Clint Barton already showed me the song a while back. He thought it was amusing for me to listen to it.
He added. Juyu just hummed it first. I'm Juyu, by the way. she said, because nobody bothered to introduce her yet. And that's my sister B. Thor looked at both of them for a moment, and his frown was considering now.
Yes, they're Skrulls,
Loki spoke up.
No, they're not a threat.
I wasn't, Thor objected. Yes, you were, Loki cut him off. The two of them stared at each other again. Why don't I have tea? Juyu interrupted. Loki blinked and looked at her. He reached back on the counter, picked up Juyu's usual mug, then held it out for her. Here you go. Juyu leaned out of her chair to take it. So what exactly was the point of the wake-up call? Bruce asked, obviously to get some sort of conversation going. Juyu suddenly liked him a lot more. Because if you leave these two alone unsupervised for too long, they start regressing back into 5-year-olds. Stark said as he walked in. Oh, he was grumpy. His hair was wet and sticking up in places, too. Hutchins snickered again, and Loki very pointedly took a sip of his tea, hiding a smirk behind his mug, none too successfully. Oh, shut up, Stark scowled at Hatchet, then tiredly trudged over to Loki and rested his forehead on his shoulder, letting Loki take some of his weight. I hate you, he mumbled. Loki chuckled and reached up to smooth down his wild hair a little. No, you don't, he said. Stark grumbled and straightened up. It looked like it took a lot of effort. You're a horrible person, Stark said. I know, Loki told him in a soothing voice, but there was laughter in his voice too. I made coffee, Bruce said. Tempting, Stark said. But then I'm gonna get addicted to the stuff again. Someone give me my tea. Oh, hey Thor, he greeted, obviously just noticing him. Thor nodded back at him a little. Then Stark looked at the table. Holy crap, we don't have enough chairs. Jarvis, I need a new table in here. One that has more chairs.
May I offer you the dining room for use?
Jarvis asked. No, the dining room sucks. It's awkward and impersonal. We're gonna have our stupid domestic meals in a kitchen. That's how it was on the ship. That's how it's gonna be here.
There's one chair left.
Sit, Loki told him, and Stark didn't object. He flopped down next to Juyu.
Would you like a table with 8 chairs then, sir?
Jarvis asked. Nah, make it 10. Pepper and Abby are going to move back to LA soon. I mean, what if they come over for breakfast? What if others come to visit? I want space here.
That may require some rearrangement,
Jarvis remarked. Stark just blinked a few times.
Just order and arrange everything, Jarvis. Then just let us know when we need to stay away from the room,
Loki said.
Yes, sir, Jarvis answered. On that note, the repair crew to fix the living room will arrive at 10 a.m. If you do not wish to be seen, I suggest you steer clear from the tower today.
Nodded Jarvis. Stark nodded. Here you go, oh fearless leader, Hedgett said as he put down a plate in front of Stark. You are so not off the hook just because you can bribe everyone with food, Stark said. It's a good bribe, though, Juyu said with a sigh. Food was Hedgett's secret weapon, and he used it shamelessly.
I have nothing against it as long as I can eat it at a reasonable time,
Drongo said. Oh, but how do they say it here on Midgard? Early bird gets the worm, Hedgett smiled. Early birds are tempted to beat the living daylights out of annoying elf, Stark said. That's how it goes. Again with the sweet-talking, Stark, Hedgett smirks. One day, Hedgett. One day, Stark warned as he grabbed his fork. Then he looked up and noticed Thor's untouched plate. Aren't you gonna eat, Point Break? He asked, then took a large bite out of his own food. Thor looked so confused, Julia was tempted to call it something like cute, which was weird considering what a huge guy he was. Yes, Thor said, finally picking up his fork too. Bee finally stopped glaring at her cup and looked up at the man. Thor stopped and looked back at her. Hello, he said quietly after a moment. Bee stared at him like she was surprised he was there. There was a little non-hostile frown on her face. She was either more tired than Juyu thought, or she didn't even bother to be on her guard with Rongo and everyone else in the room. Either way, it looked like she didn't notice him. Then she stood up to get herself more tea. Oh, okay, so Thor was in the "your existence does not bother me" category. That could have been worse. She doesn't talk. Don't worry about it, Bruce said when Thor stared after me.
Oh, I see.
Thor nodded. He looked up again, just in time to catch how Loki smiled when Bee held out the kettle, offering to refill Loki's mug too. Thor's eyes lingered on the two of them, and he looked thoughtful. Then he finally took a bite out of the food in front of him. For some reason, first breakfasts were meaningful, but you couldn't shake the feeling that things were far from all right. It wasn't just Loki's silence or Thor's silence. It was the way Bruce kept twirling his cup in his hand as he looked at Thor or Loki. It was the way Stark looked like he did not sleep much last night, and not for a fun reason. Maybe Hatchet and Loki didn't go to bed at all. It was hard to tell. They could be up and about for days if they wanted to. Then she caught Drongo's gaze, and at least that was reassuring. It was not his, everything is fine look, but the, it could be worse look. That was better, because you wouldn't have believed the former anyway. It really could have been worse, but that grim look she saw on Hatchet's face yesterday, only that was still bothering her